Thanksgiving is over. It's December 1st. Christmas is on its way. And we're going to be talking about things that we're thankful for and maybe some gifts that we have. Chaffee, why don't you, before we do before we do like the big splashy intro, do you want to do your version of it? Maybe, move your.
I don't know. What's my. That beats my version.
I didn't know you were going to talk. And as you started talking, I was already pushing the button and we had our little intro. Welcome, everybody. This is Books Cafe, sponsored by free-ebooks.net. I'm Scott Paton, your co-host, along with Chaffee-Thanh Nguyen. Hey, Chaffee, how are you doing?
I am rocking and rolling, ready to go.
Awesome. We had a guest lined up who is an amazing author. The digital architect, she calls herself. She lives in the Philippines, which means it is now 5:30 in the morning in the Philippines. And there's a very good chance that either she forgot to set her alarm or her alarm didn't go off or she slept through her alarm. Regardless, you're stuck with the two of us. And we thought, having had 13 seconds to figure out that she wasn't going to be here on time, come up with some new topics. And I thought that your suggestion, Chaffee, was great. We've just had Thanksgiving in the United States. Canadians are very, very fortunate, because we have our Thanksgiving mid-October, which happens to be around my birthday. So oftentimes I'll have my birthday party with my family, and Thanksgiving, we wrap it all together. We have a big party and a celebration. And then we wait, 5 weeks later, and we, why not join our American cousins to the south and have another party? And so we have 2 turkeys before Christmas, and then usually we have turkey at Christmas. So that's 3 turkeys, 3 months, and we really need to rest in January. Gym memberships go through the roof in January because we got to work all that turkey off. But you had suggested that we talk a little bit about gratitude and what we're thankful for, Chaffee. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, it's a conversation I actually have a lot with my son. Because he was actually born in the United States, and I was born in a third world country, Vietnam, and came over as a refugee. So I guess you can say I'm a first generation American. And so, when I grew
your
up,
son is a first generation American.
Oh, my son's the first generation. So I'm the zero generation.
You're like a 33,000th generation Vietnamese.
That's right. So, well, the point though is that I grew up, when I was growing up, I fully, I didn't understand finances and money and all that kind of stuff because I was still a kid, right? I did know though that I was different. I was different because I was in a primarily Caucasian neighborhood. We were sponsored by families that were very well off. They provided.
How old were you when you came to America?
Pardon me?
How old were you when you came to America?
I was a wee tot, so I was like almost 3, so not quite 3 yet. I was the youngest of 4 children.
Wow. I didn't realize you were that young.
Yeah. So, but the whole point though is that we grew up on food stamps, we grew up on government aid, we grew up on a very meager lifestyle. And, I was happy as a kid, because we played outside, we had friends, we did all that stuff. And so, at that age, you don't really, again, money isn't a really big thing. It's just, do you have toys? Do you have friends? And can you play and you have a good time?
You're not hungry all the time. So,
yeah. Now, what I did realize was that, some of my friends had better toys than I did, right? Some of my friends had more toys than I did, and some of them had newer toys than I did. So, having that kind of background and then growing up and getting an education, getting a job, and then having an income, that's like night and day. My first real big paycheck was when I was an intern at a big tech company, and I got a paycheck for that week. And I was like, holy mackerel, I actually have money, because I grew up, and when I went to college, I had to apply for a bunch of scholarships. I had to apply for grants. I had to apply for loans. I was living on ramen noodles and soup cans. And so when I actually got a job at a big tech company and actually had a decent income, it was a night and day thing. And so, from there, starting my own business and then getting into real estate and then doing multi-million-dollar deals. Oh my gosh, it's like, once your mind has expanded, it's very difficult for it to contract again. Right? So, and that upbringing, though, that background of mine gave me an appreciation of everything that I have, gave me an appreciation of realizing that it doesn't really matter how much I have, as long as I have my friends and my family and the people closest to me. Everything else is just a blessing. Everything else is just something that I'm grateful for, something that I'm grateful to have. Makes life easier, don't get me wrong. And again, even if I didn't have it, I know that I can rebuild it. I can start over and I can do things better. And so, that kind of mindset has carried me through a lot of challenges in life. And my son, who, as you said, is a first generation American, hasn't had to go through any of that. I mean, he was brought up with this concept of, I've taken care of him, and anything that he's really wanted, we've provided for him. Now, I've done my best to instill that kind of foundation in him. And again, without actually going through that, without actually living that and experience it, you just, you hear it goes in one ear and kind of out the other ear sometimes. And so, I have a great appreciation for things that I realize that a lot of people don't have just because of my upbringing.
Right. Yeah. His experience growing up is going to be very different from yours growing up.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting. It's a challenge, but it's also a good thing, right? Because you look at your grandparents, your parents, your son, and you can see this progression in the right direction, right? Where, there are a lot of places where there's no change. Not mine, but their grandpa, had goats in the field, and their parents had goats in the field, and they have goats in the field, and their children are probably going to have goats in the field, and there's, it's just, that's going to be their life. There's not going to be any change unless, bandits come through the village or something like that.
Now,
right?
what's interesting though is, I don't know if you ever read this book. I forgot the author. Stanley Thomas or Thomas Stanley wrote the book "The Millionaire Next Door." Not sure. If you read that
yes, book. I did read that book.
Very popular book, and he's done a ton of research, over 20 years of research to figure out, what makes a millionaire, what makes a successful individual, and the research that he found is that, there's a lot of people that are in your neighborhood or around you that are very wealthy and you would never know. And one of the reasons why is they live a very frugal lifestyle, right? They don't spend lavishly when they don't have to. And what his research found was that a lot of times, I think it's the third or the fourth generation after somebody has become successful, that a collapse happens, a cycle happens, right? And so a lot of times immigrants will come to the United States, or immigrants will come from somewhere, and then they'll build this great lifestyle. They'll work their behind off, and they'll have this work ethic and really, put forth the effort, and their children will get some of that effort, and they'll continue to be successful. And then somewhere along that lines there, then that kind of appreciation and hard work kind of starts to fade. And about the third or fourth generation, it's now you're entitled, right? And that hard work mentality, that work to build your life, is now, well, I should be entitled to this. I should, why aren't you giving me this kind of stuff? And so that's what happens. And that was kind of the research in that book. And it's kind of a big aha when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny you bring that up, because I've talked to a number of people recently about that exact thing. What we call it in Scotland, where my grandpa is from, is short sleeve, long sleeve, short sleeve. So grandpa was working in the field. He was tilling. It was hot. He had short sleeves on. He didn't want his son to have that lifestyle, that life. He wanted a better life for his son, saved his money, put his son into university. The son gets a accounting degree, becomes an accountant. He's working, blah, blah, blah. He's got the white shirt and everything else, and he makes his money. And of course, the son doesn't want the grandson to have the lifestyle that he had growing up, because he was on a farm, dirty, and had to struggle for everything that they got and had to fight. So, he makes things easier for the grandson. And of course, then the grandson, he just doesn't appreciate, doesn't work hard or anything else, like you're saying, third or fourth generation. And he's back digging ditches, right? But he's outside, short sleeves, no education, no money, no prospects. And and it's funny because there are, like, the Queen of England, right? They've 200 or 300 years they've been ruling England. It's the same family. Or you look at some of the old wealth, the Rockefellers and it's like, like, what do they do to? And I think what they do is they work really hard to instill the values, so that, well, for example,
I don't think that's the case.
I don't think that's the case.
No. They put in protections to protect the family legacy.
They protect the legacy from the no good children
So I'll give you an example, because I actually did have a friend who was a trust fund baby. Okay, so what they do is they stick money in a trust fund, and it's independently managed, and it generates a certain amount of income, and that income then is distributed. The gains from that income is distributed to the heirs of the family, and they get a certain amount, right? And it's interesting. The buddy that I was hanging around with, he knew how much money he had, and it wasn't, and I mean, this wasn't like a Paris Hilton kind of trust fund baby, right? I mean, his father had invested in some oil companies early on in the grandfather, early on in the early 1900s, and stuck it in this trust fund. And so, it was enough for the kids, the heirs, to live on. Only it wasn't like a multi-million-dollar per kid kind of deal, like the Walmart family or anything. And what was interesting was that he somehow had understood this. He somehow knew the value of that dollar. And so he was very careful in spending that, whereas all of his siblings really was just like, I get this free money, I'm just going to go spend it. So they spent it all. And so every year they were just waiting for their allowance from the fund, and that's what they were living on, and they didn't work very hard, whereas he worked a job and worked to supplement that income to live a better lifestyle. So, but that's what they do, though, is that that investment bulk never goes away. That's protected. Right. The heirs cannot touch that, and so that's where everything stems from. And so that's why that you have the generational wealth, because that continues to grow, and they just get a certain amount. So
cool. When you were talking about The Millionaire Next Door, and it was like decades ago that I read that book, I think, you reminded me of Warren Buffett. He still lives in the same house he bought, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, whenever it was, when he didn't have a lot. He lives a very, modest lifestyle, and he's one of the wealthiest people in the world. So, yeah, it's interesting how when most people think of, oh man, if I had like $1 million, I'd be all the things you'd be doing. Of course, in a couple of years, you probably wouldn't have $1 million left. But the people that keep it, it's like the money is not important in terms of creating the lifestyle, right? Because you could have the same lifestyle probably on $100,000 a year.
I think, it's, again, research and data. I have an engineering background. I know that, Scott, and some of our viewers might know that as well. Only, I'm always looking at data. I'm always looking at research. And when you study individuals that have run into wealth, shall we say, for example, lottery winners, people that win all of a sudden have this, all these millions of dollars from the lottery, you'll find that if they don't have that right mentality and start with, one, appreciate what they already have, right? And then two, understand financial, I guess, just basic financial management, then after a few years, even though they came into millions of dollars, they're right back to where they started. And there's story after story after story of individuals that have all of a sudden run into millions of dollars and then spent it on, what did they spend it on? They spent it on things. They spent it on things that weren't important. Or they felt like they were spending it on things that were important, like their friends and their family, and they just gave out and handed out money. And so by the end of it,
that happens to athletes a lot, Chaffee.
Yeah.
You hear these stories about, wow, man, you're a NFL player, football player, you know, you make $1 million, you should be buying us dinner. And after 4 or 5 or 6 years of that and no real financial planning, when they retire, they're like, oh man, I got kind of the house and the car, and I don't know how I'm going to get the food.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. I remember that the basketball players, the NBA went on, or the basketball players went on strike a few years ago. I mean, this was a handful of years ago, and they had this charity game to help the basketball players save their houses, right? Not just save their house, save their houses from going into foreclosure. So they would have 2 or 3 houses, right? And they're like, we're going to lose our houses, and so we have to put on this charity game to support the basketball players. I'm like, well okay, so most people only have 1 house or no house. So
right.
That's a different story, though.
But you know, it goes to that whole. I mean, like when you think of the stereotypic football player, basketball player in the United States, they started in very humble places. Usually their moms, you know, sacrificed so they could go to college and, you know, become better, you know, drafted and all the rest of it. And there's no model. There's no modeling. There's no one to model who is, you know, successful and kept their money. They don't know what to do, right? And if they get bad advice, I mean, because I often say, you know, there's 2 parts to being wealthy. One is getting the money, and the second part is keeping it. And sometimes keeping it is harder than getting it, because all of a sudden you become this target. There are sharks, right? And they circle and they say, oh yeah, we know who's got the money and who doesn't. And then they come and say, hey, Chaffee, you know, I've got this bridge in Brooklyn. It's great. You know, we're going to be able to get 10 cents a car and 1 million cars a day go across it. So just think about how rich we're going to be. And then you put a couple million in, and 5 years later, it's all gone. And oh, sorry, you know, the bridge is bankrupt, or the guy is gone with the money, and you never, you know, because they haven't been taught, you know, the basic financial responsibilities. And if they come into the money, then it's kind of like it'll never stop. And of course, they get an injury, or they just get older and it stops. You know, some young guy comes and takes their position. And away you go.
A lot of 30 some odd year old athletes run into that challenge, because once they hit the 30 mark, now they're considered old. Right. Imagine that, right? And once they're old, like you said, they're replaceable. You know, I don't know what the average lifetime of an NFL player is. Only I believe it's less than 10 years.
I think you're absolutely right.
And so, you know, if you start playing in the NFL when you're 22 years old, or 21, 22, you graduate from college, and now you're like 30, all of a sudden, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And if you haven't been saving up the money that you've made up until this point, now you're like starting over again. Right. So, and, you know, as I was talking about my background, if they were smart, if they had been with that right mindset, you know, just being grateful for what they already have, being grateful for knowing that, you know, friends and family are the most important thing, that having the mental wherewithal that all this extra money is just a blessing, and it could be invested properly. And when invested properly, it can spread out and help many, many people, or create a legacy, right? If they had that mentality, then when they became 30 or 31 or whatever, they would be set for the rest of their life. They wouldn't have to worry about anything. I mean, if you make $10 million over 10 years, and, you know, $1 million every year for 10 years in profit, in cash, like some of these athletes can and do, they do that in a year.
And endorsements, right?
And endorsements and things. I mean, you can live off the interest alone, you know, of $10 million and not live a lavish lifestyle. Only you could live a comfortable lifestyle off of just the interest in $10 million, right? Now, if you had $100 million, and lived off the interest of 100 million, think about how much, how well you could live off of that.
Yeah, and your children and their children and their children could all continue to live well.
Right.
And if you wanted to give something back to the community that you grew up, then you can make a foundation or something along those lines, a trust, and have that create income that goes to, different types of programs to help the community, depending on what's going on in the community.
So we talked about, just being grateful for what you have, Scott, and appreciating what's in your daily life and everything. What are you grateful for? What are some of the things that make you think about gratitude?
Well, I'm grateful for my co-stars. This is Chloe, who doesn't want to be up here, but she wants my attention. She claws me if I don't pet her, right? And then I have to lean down and pet her. But this chair is a little bit different, and she reached up, and one of her claws got caught in it. And it was like she couldn't get unstuck, and I couldn't unstick her. So it was pretty funny. But I think I'm grateful for the being able to go to different places and look after pets, and that helps their owners, and then it's really kind of a neat thing when I come back. This is my second trip to this particular place where I'm looking after two cats. One is like right there. I keep looking down at her. And, the first time it was kind of like, who is this guy? And it takes a couple of weeks to warm up. And this time they were both like right up, scratch my ear sort of thing. And, and then to be healthy enough to be able to travel and do that, I think is pretty amazing. And the fact that all my family is healthy and fine, so I don't have to, if there was some problem at home, I'd be at home trying to deal with the problem, whatever it is. And so, I spent a lot of years raising my children, and now that they're all on their own and they're all healthy, it's just nice to be able to have no responsibility and travel around.
I mean, that's all you do is you travel and look at places and go to places and eat like exotic foods, because that's all I see in your Facebook posts.
It's not exotic food. Actually, exotic food, regular food somewhere else in the world is exotic. I'll
that is.
I really enjoy Middle Eastern, Arabian, Greek, Moroccan type style of food. I very rarely get it, and I don't know anything about it. But every time I've had one of those dishes, I just love it. And growing up, my mom, bless her heart, I hope she never sees this part, she couldn't cook lamb to save her life. And to be fair, in Canada, it's a lamb chop, and it gets grilled or fried like it's a steak, and then you put like some sauce on it, green sauce on it, I forget what it is. And it was terrible. So I grew up thinking that lamb was just awful. And one of my friends said, "Oh, well, you've never had good lamb then." I said, "Oh, no, I don't like lamb." So they cooked in a terracotta pot with these spices, and the lamb just like melted in your mouth, and it was just delicious. So in Bogota last week, I was with my Spanish teacher, and I said, "Oh, there's an Arabian restaurant. Let's go." So we walk in, and the guy puts like this Arabian type thing on my head, and then a little fez thing on my teacher's head, and we just had a great time. And then halfway through the meal, they had a belly dancer, but she was upstairs, and I was like kind of curious, and he said, "Well, come on up." And the owner, it wasn't a big place, right? There wasn't like tons of people there. He brought us up, and we watched this gal doing her belly dance, moving parts of her body in ways that I had no idea could possibly move that way, and that was very exotic, and particularly for Colombia, because it was Arabian food. That was really authentic Arabian food. It was, he was obviously from, I never asked him, but Turkey or the Middle East or someplace like that, and so to be able to have those experiences and just enjoy it, I think is one of the things that I'm grateful for. And of course, you and being my co-host here, I'm very grateful for that, because it's a lot more fun when there's more than one person. Which reminds me, everybody, if you're enjoying the show, please, hit the like button and hit the subscribe. Every Wednesdays at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, we're on. Usually we have an author join us because we want to talk about their book and their writing process and that sort of stuff. But, free books, we've got 5 free books a month for you. Just sign up for free and you can get the books. And that actually reminded me, since we were kind of talking about migration and travel, I went to the site to see if we had any books along those lines, and I found a few, and I thought I'd just take a second and share them. So here's a phrase book of 5 languages, downloaded 31,000 times. So, amazing. 21 ways to improve your camping lifestyle. I wasn't going to even show this one until I saw it had 23,000 downloads, right? And it's published, 10 years ago. And the Definite London Guide, making money from travel websites. Oh, that would be interesting. And Free Beer and Sex.
Nice. What else do you need?
A Small Guide to Torax. I have no idea what Torax is. It's a little whitewashed pueblo in Andalusia, as seen through the eyes of a foreigner who lived there for 7 years. So, true story. I don't know where that place is. And if you are a collector, you can get Louis Vuitton luxury baggage.
Hey, Scott, while you're there, do a search for gratitude. Are there any books on gratitude? Since that's what we're talking about today.
Gratitude for today.
There you go.
Very recent publisher. Yeah, the 7-Day Gratitude Challenge. These are new books that have just come up. The Science of Getting Rich. This is an awesome book. It is really, really good. Lisa's prayer book from October, 10 years ago. But let's look at the 10-Day Gratitude Challenge.
7-day.
The 7-day, yeah. It should have been 10 days. It's a short read, 29 pages.
Wow, that is a short read.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Challenge. Yeah. So there you go. So these are all, so they're all available for anybody that wants to read them. They're, like I said, you get 5 books free, and they're available in Kindle, PDFs, text. So, whatever sort of format you need to read, you prefer to read in, it can do that. Although I noticed with Kindle, if it's a PDF, Kindle will convert it to a Kindle version. So all that stuff is getting easier and easier to do. But we have hundreds of thousands of people visit the site every week and join up and sign up and come back and read. Like, our whole purpose is to help authors be able to build a community and to help readers find new readers, because sometimes you get tired of reading the same old Stephen King novel over and over and over again, right?
What?
And now he doesn't even write it. He just sort of thinks up the idea and he gets his team to write the book. Reminds me of another very famous author. He doesn't write horror stories, though. that would be you.
Who would that be? Oh, okay. Hey, we got a great comment, Scott, if you'd like to share that. I'd like to do a shout out to my good friend Lisa. Lisa, how are you? Great to hear from you. It's great to see your image again. Lisa and I worked together a long time ago, and when she was in Chicago, and then she moved over to California. I love her. She is wonderful, full of spirit, full of energy. Grateful to have her in my life and to have met her as well. So wonderful individual. Should check her out on Facebook, actually. I believe she does coaching now for fitness coaching. So definitely, cool. If you want to live a healthier lifestyle, she is the one to connect with. Beautiful individual. And with that, I do want to share, since I am a coach, Scott, that's, kind of what I do. I do want to share that, whenever you're having, this, I love Thanksgiving because it is brings to the forefront of the things that you're thankful for, things that we're grateful for, friends, families, things that you have, just being alive, being healthy, and being able to go explore new adventures and new experiences. And what I could say is that sometimes the holidays are difficult for individuals because maybe they are, maybe they are alone, or they're struggling, or they're having some challenges. And it's very difficult sometimes to feel sad or unhappy when you focus on the things that you're grateful for. And so that's the power of gratitude. So when you are feeling down, when you're feeling negative, when you're feeling negative energies, think about the things that you're grateful for. Think about the things that are in your life that you have that are special to you, or that other people might not have. The simple fact sometimes that maybe you have a roof over your head is very powerful, because there are people that don't have roofs over the head. The fact that, maybe you have food to eat, because there are people that are starving around the world. The fact that you have all four limbs, because again, some people don't have all four limbs. And so just being grateful for those little things, ignites some kind of energy inside of you that makes it very difficult for you to then feel sad or unhappy, because now this feeling of gratitude, this feeling of greatness is inside of you, is coming out, and that spreads to every part of the life. So just want to share that little bit of thing when you're feeling sad or upset or down. Just take a few moments, take a few minutes, and just really think about the things that you have in your life, the things that are going on in your life, that you can be grateful for, that you might have that other people might not have, because I can promise you that there are always worse situations that you could be in than the situation that you're at. And then the second thing too is then find somebody to reach out to, find somebody to talk to, find somebody to discuss your feelings with. Sometimes it's just to share, and then other times it's to get help. And by sharing what you're feeling, by sharing the things that you're thinking about, that feeling of gratefulness and some of the challenge that you're going through, that's going to help you get out of that funk as well, and start feeling better about yourself and better about the things around you. So gratitude is a very, very powerful tool for you to use to appreciate more about life and the things that are around you, and to move you forward and help you succeed more.
And that was today's tip.
There you go.
Thank you, Chef.
I did that early, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't give me a chance to ask you for it. You just gave it. So but we can have it at the end as much as at the beginning. So thank you for that. That was really brilliant. And you hit it on the head. Oftentimes if people are feeling a little bit, and there's feeling down all the time, and then there's just days where you may feel down. But being of service to other people is a great way to change that emotional state. And Lisa chimed in with, yes, power of gratitude is huge. Beautiful words on gratitude. Totally agree, Lisa. Thank you. All right. So, Chaffee, we're coming to the end of our time together today. Thank you very much. It's been awesome having you on. And thank you so much for sharing everything. If somebody wanted to you had mentioned you're a coach. So you've had a number of books that you've written and that you wrote. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. Produce, I guess, would be a better way of putting it.
There you go.
So
I've done both.
You've done both. That's right. So you can help people get their books written, get the books produced. And that's not all you do. You're a business coach, and many aspects of business. You give great advice. So if somebody wanted to connect with you, what should they do?
First, go to my website at keyconceptcoaching.com, just keyconceptcoaching.com. Check me out. I got some articles on there. I got some information on there. And if you can send me an email, or you can schedule a free consult as well, just keyconceptcoaching.com/schedule. And then you can schedule a free consult if you want to take it to the next step.
Great. Thank you. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. This has been Books Cafe, sponsored by free-ebooks.com. Make sure you head over, join for free, have some fun, and also don't forget to check us out on our Facebook page. And with that, Chaffee, thank you. We'll see you again next week. And everybody,
Thank you, Scott.
Make sure you like, subscribe, leave comments, and join us next week, Wednesdays at 5 o'clock, almost at Friday o'clock. Wednesdays at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye for now.